It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Bob Ross, and for the next 13 weeks,
Come on.
You can't tell a book by its cover.
It's the Muppet Show!
Viewers like you.
Viewers like you.
Viewers like you.
From viewers like you.
And viewers like you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Television was first created as a medium for education and communication, but almost 50 years after the television was invented, it was still only being used by major networks and local broadcasters in order to sell product and gain as much of a profit as possible. These big networks had little to no regard for the welfare of their audiences, focusing only on how much money they would be spending in the end. But in 1967, this would all change as President Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Revolutionary Public Broadcasting Act. This act sparked the creation of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, better known as the CPB, which was a board consisting of 9 members chosen directly by the President of the United States. These figures would delegate funds and support to different public stations and producers. The best use of the CPB's funds was put into the creation of the Public Broadcasting Service, or PBS. The purpose of PBS was to promote diverse educational content for both children and adults with a strict no commercial rule. PBS was the most important broadcasting service of the 20th century because it provided easily accessible, educational, and enriching news and television programs that reflect the public, supporting fundamental human rights and changing the basis of current broadcasting and children's television as seen today.
The late 60s and early 70s were a time of diverse liberation movements across the nation for various marginalized groups. Women continued the fight for their equal rights in the midst of the second wave of the feminist movement, trying to ensure their equal representation in politics and media. Similarly, the civil rights movement was at its peak in the 1960s as African Americans fought against disenfranchisement, segregation, and the racial discrimination they faced for centuries. Simultaneously, another movement reached its peak: the War on Poverty. It began with the passage of Lyndon B. Johnson's Economic Opportunity Act, which provided health care, welfare, and education for impoverished Americans. He also passed the Revenue Act of 1964, which led to major tax cuts helping the poverty line significantly.
The Public Broadcasting Service assisted these minorities by covering these movements as a reliable and informational source. Additionally, a lot of the PBS shows made it a focus to showcase a diverse cast: African Americans like LeVar Burton on Reading Rainbow and Matt Robinson on Sesame Street, Latinos like Emily Delgado on Sesame Street, and shows hosted by women like The French Chef featuring Julia Child. PBS stepped away from the commonly televised racial stereotypes and prejudice among minorities, creating characters that realistically represent marginalized people, using their program to give a voice to those people that didn't have one at the time.
It was very difficult at that time to find meaningful work as Latino actors, I realized I had gotten a role on television that was the role of a Latino, Mexican-American, who was like a regular person.
Like never before, the television reflected its targeted audience, the middle class and marginalized groups of America. The Public Broadcasting Service continued to be a voice for all. Their service was free, but their impact was priceless.
One of the first shows to be featured on PBS was The French Chef with Julia Child in 1963. The show brought the idea of European cooking into the United States. America, who had previously only cooked for nutrients and low cost, was now introduced to the flavor and enjoyment of French food in a simple and easy format. America could cook gourmet food in their own kitchen at home, allowing them to experiment with various new recipes that were unheard of for the impoverished and middle-class citizens of America.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood began in 1968 starring Fred Rogers. It featured ordinary children with diverse backgrounds as friends in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The show promoted the value of acceptance and the importance of teaching children to appreciate those around them and to love their neighbors, an important message in a time of division.
Glad you like it. You're welcome, Officer Clemens.
Shall we turn this off?
Is that enough?
Oh, that's fine.
Rogers was a role model for children and taught them how to navigate through difficult situations. He connected with his audience in a way that no other television program could. Not only did he educate children, but also the parents on how children should be treated, strengthening the bonds of families across America. On May 1st, 1969, a court case concerning the funding of public broadcasting was brought to the Senate. It was proposed by Senator Pastor and consisted of a dramatic cut from the previous budget of $20 million to a measly $10 million. Senator Pastor had been listening to many statements and had yet to budge when the courtroom introduced Fred Rogers to testify before the Senate.
I'm proud to present Mr. Rogers to you now.
It's very important to me. I care deeply about children.
It's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
Sesame Street was created by the Children's Television Workshop and Joan Cooney in 1969. Joan had previously worked on a study called The Potential Uses of Television in Preschool Education, giving Sesame Street the direct knowledge they needed to create an amazing educational television program. Sesame Street, like many other educational programs on PBS, taught children not only numbers and letters, but also emotions and morals, using puppets to connect to the children.
Sesame Street depicted an impoverished neighborhood in the Bronx of New York City. They wanted to showcase inner-city children, and their target audience was always middle-class children of marginalized groups. They made a point to hire a diverse cast to reflect the reality of a New York City street. Sesame Street taught important life lessons using puppets to make it easier to understand. For example, in episode 87 of Sesame Street, released in 1970, Kermit the Frog sings the song Being Green as a metaphor for discrimination based on skin color. Reading Rainbow and the host LeVar Burton used books and stories to teach real-life lessons on deeper topics such as discrimination and racism. They spoke about other important topics like the attacks that occurred on September 11th to children, something that very few people had done. Burton also played an important role as an African-American man, not only hosting a television show, but also teaching children fundamental skills.
In 1995, there was once again a threat to the funding of public broadcasting. LeVar Burton, along with many others, testified opposing the impending funding cut against an even stricter board.
Well, let me think about it. Should public television continue to receive federal funding? When I ask the question, when I hear it in my mind, it sounds ludicrous. You see, the only thing we're selling on PBS to our children, Mr. Chairman, is inspiration.
PBS introduced many changes that are still seen in television today. They shifted a focus for education towards lower-income families. It began with the Ready to Learn grant of 1995 that offered a new budget to educational programs featured on PBS that eventually developed into the Ready to Learn initiative funded by the U.S. Department of Education. PBS could provide high-quality and educational media to set young children up for success for free.
In 1996, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program was passed, providing financial assistance and other services to help low-income parents care for their children. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act was passed, ensuring the best academic performance possible, no matter the income of the school, with standardized testing.
The subsection of PBS, PBS Kids, was introduced September 6, 1999. Creating a 24-hour channel dedicated to PBS's children's television programs. These programs reflected its viewers by featuring characters from various ethnic backgrounds and home life situations such as divorce and same-sex marriage.
This focus on diverse educational programming directly inspired the Children's Television Act, which ensured the airing of educational content for children to watch with their hourly requirements each week. This act led to the Children's Programming Report and Order, which required stations to air at least 3 hours of educational programming created to directly inform children under 16. Public broadcasting was still in the works when PBS was created, meaning there was a lack of media regulations. PBS is a broadcasting network that puts the education and enrichment of all the American people above all else, something that was easily lost within our other networks. But PBS uses their platform to give the people what they want, content that reflects them.
And having the ability to access so many families through media, especially ones in marginalized groups, it is their responsibility to provide a good education that will impact the future generations of America for many years to come. PBS educates their viewers on core subjects of mathematics, literature, history, and science. They capture the culture of human nature by diving into the importance of empathy, compassion, and moral values. They cover untouched topics like the horrors of poverty and racial discrimination, as well as more abstract concepts like grief and even death.
PBS ensures free educational media to all their viewers, not just children. PBS, unlike other news stations, is funded by the public, preventing them from being influenced by owners and donors. They use this liberty to provide a news source that is free of censorship, reinforcing fundamental human rights of freedom of speech and press.
It set the bar for diverse representation depicted in media as it gained more support from its audience. The legacy of the public broadcasting service is not just the improvements it brought to the culture of television and broadcasting, but the impact it leaves on countless Americans, the generations to follow, and viewers like you.